Recording, test, test. Okay, I'm out.
You are now muted.
Hello, Anurag. All right. How is everyone doing? Welcome to the OpenBazaar Developers Call. Today is June 21st, 2018. Thank you guys for joining us today. We have lots of absences. We've got a couple of people at some conferences, and you're going to have to settle for Mike and Jen, Mike, and we're going to kind of MC your call for the day. Just want to remind you guys, we have a public chat on the side. If you guys have questions, I'll try to take questions out of there. If you guys have Mike, I'll ask any questions that you guys might have at the end. We'll go through a quick summary as far as what's coming up for our next release, version 2.2.2. A couple of things that we got working in the background, and then we'll open it up for announcements and anything that you guys happen to be working on and questions that you guys might have. So we'll get right into it. 2.2.2 is our next release. That's right around the corner. We don't have a firm release date currently, but we could probably expect this to drop in the next week or two, depending on how our testing is going to go. We've got some really nice features that is going to be coming for this next release. We've added a bunch of new currencies from CoinMarketCap. We are including a new feature for our crypto listings, which includes price markup. So you guys will be able to use something other than market price for selling your crypto or exchanging your cryptocurrencies for other crypto. We are putting in some supporting code that will eventually handle our multi-wallet implementation for our upcoming release. So while we won't have any multi-wallet support, that is support for multiple currencies at the same time in our 2.2.2 release, you can expect that this release will prepare some of that for our upcoming release, and we'll have the ability of supporting multiple coins at the same time then. So we'll have some groundwork laid there. We've also improved some of our dispute handling and notifications that are around there. So some people who have had challenges with funds being stuck inside of disputes, and some better user experience around when disputes are expiring and how long each individual party has to actually open a dispute if they are interested in opening one. Those improvements are going to be part of this release. And then a bunch of minor fixes and enhancements. We've removed the Bitcoin Cash prefix from the addresses and some of the UI screens. We've added the patch method to some of the CORS handling that we have on the backend API. We've done some improvements around our cryptocurrency inventory APIs as far as how that data is cached and how accurate that data is. So all of that stuff should kind of be in the background and not affect you guys too much on the front end. That summarizes the majority of what's going into 2.2.2. And you probably will see a release for that, as I said, again in the next week or two, or at least a release candidate. And depending on how well the release testing goes, that should drop shortly after that. Additionally, we have some other non-OpenBazaar desktop things that we're working on. If you haven't already heard, we have a browse-only experience that's already running. It's working, and you can check that out at OpenBazaar.com. So if you guys have stores or specific listings that you're interested in promoting outside of the application, these links are through OpenBazaar.com are perfectly viable and reasonable way for you to start promoting that stuff if you decide that you'd like to. I also happen to know from the community that there are a couple of other people working on web type experiences. BazaarDog has something that he already has functioning, and I know that the few people in the developer chat rooms have expressed interest and curiosity around how that works. Unfortunately, our browse-only experience is not open source, and I don't know that we will open source it at any point in the near future, but at the very least, we would be happy to answer questions if you have any concerns or thoughts about how to do some of the stuff that we did there in our chat rooms on Slack. So I recommend asking and poking there if you need to. And we're also making progress on our buying experience on the web. Being able to purchase via a web browser without the installation of a local desktop application is the goal here. We're still very, very early in the planning for it, as there are some immature technologies, some nascent technologies that we're still waiting on, specifically JavaScript implemented versions of IPFS, which support all of the functionality and features that we need to support the buying experience. Right now, we're thinking a lot about how identities are managed and used on the web in a way that allows users to maintain their maximum amount of privacy and control over their data. We have some ideas as far as how that works, and proof of concepts are already in progress with some pretty good results so far. We can talk more about that if you're interested, but that progress is ongoing, and I expect that we'll be in a good place to try to have a buying experience on the web sometime this year. But as I said, again, this is still very early, and anything is liable to change based on how other details come out of this. So aside from that, that's basically everything that our team has been working on over the past couple of weeks. We don't have too much else to report on the community-facing side of things while we try to get the 2.2.2 release wrapped. I will say that we are continuing the investigation on documentation casually in the background and how to solve that, and exploring various wiki solutions that will make it easy for our community to interact with the documentation. We're starting with our internal usage of our docs and playing with those tests, and depending on how that feels, we might end up opening that same pattern up for our public documentation and the sorts of things that we would want to share with our community. I don't have too much else to update you guys on. If you guys have questions, again, feel free to throw them out there in public chat, or jump out into voice and feel free to share there. Chris, you had an interest in hearing more about the web experience and the web wallet. I don't know how much detail I can get there for you, but we expect the web experience is going to be mostly on par with all of the features and functionality that you expect to find in the desktop application. A lot of this hinges around proper handling of identities. And currently, when I say identity on OpenBazaar, we're talking about the keys, the encryption keys that you use to sign your messages and validate that you are who you are when you're sending messages to other people on the network, as well as the types of ways that that identity could be stored and saved for later use. Say, for example, that you decide to use a web browser at your home computer to make a purchase, and for some reason you need to dispute that purchase with the vendor. We would like for the buyer to be able to reinstantiate their identity, possibly on another web browser, and be able to dispute that as the original signer did when he or she initiated that order with the vendor. So finding good ways to handle the identity that allows these use cases to work have been tricky, particularly when it comes down to handling conflict resolution and scenarios where the identity as it existed on one computer has a different state than the identity that was reinstantiated on another computer. We still have to kind of handle some of those scenarios, and we're not quite sure how a lot of that works yet, but those are the sorts of things that we're exploring. And as far as the web wallet is concerned, at this point, we have an implementation that allows our existing coins, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to have Litecoin as well, working with a wallet that will work in the web. And this means that we're not going to be using our traditional SPV type wallets, and we never could for Zcash, but we will be using an API-based wallet for our web experiences. And while we recognize that there are some verification concerns there, we don't expect that the web version is going to ever be quite as verifiable as you would get in an SPV wallet on your desktop. So we believe that's a reasonable trade-off for the convenience of being able to use the web. But aside from that concern, we expect that the web wallet that we're developing will not only allow you to support all of the coins that you currently have on desktop, but it will allow you to support them simultaneously without having to choose one or the other. And it will give us a lot of capability of expanding the number of coins that we support without the requirement of there being an SPV type solution per se. I don't know if that answers all of the things that you're interested in, Chris, but that's probably the majority of where we're at.
No, that's good. That's good, Mike. Yeah, those tricky technical issues you guys are going to have to work through. So I'm excited to see how you guys do that. And yeah, I kind of figured with the web experience, you guys would have to maybe cut some corners and do some centralized tricks. But as long as the standalone app is there for the, to keep things distributed, you know, I agree. Like you guys might need to do whatever you have to do to make the experience smoother and onboard more users. And as long as there's a path to get to a more secure and distributed version, I mean, I support you guys 100%. I think you guys are doing awesome work.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we want to try and give as much accessibility on the web as we can without just taking away from the privacy and decentralization that are tenets of our desktop app. So that's foremost in our thinking. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to throw them into the chat room. Does anyone, by any chance, have any updates for things that they're working on that they'd like to share about?
I've got an update on p2pvps.org if anybody's interested. I'll put the link in the chat. I've revamped all the documentation, and I'm getting ready to do a minor release of all the different software and do some video walkthroughs. I've actually got a guy who has subscribed his Raspberry Pi to the network, and I don't know who it is. I built the system to be as anonymous as possible, and this guy hasn't felt obliged to let me know who he is. So he's just up there on the network. His device is up for rent through the OpenBazaar store, and it appears and disappears every once in a while. But otherwise, I don't know who it is. I don't know where it is. And that's the way the system was designed.
That's pretty cool, Chris.
Yeah,
that's good.
I'm looking for people to help out at this point. I'm going to start opening it up to the wider community. I think I've got it in a good place where it's a good to share and good to iterate on. I've got a good continuous integration system set up and code coverage, so I'm ready to accept and review pull requests if I can get developers interested in contributing. But yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes, and following OpenBazaar developments closely just because I leverage the API heavily in the program.
Well, that's great news. Yeah, we'll try to keep you abreast of things changing on the API. I will say that there are going to be some API changes as it relates to our wallet improvements that we're talking about. Nothing in the 2.2.2 to release for you to worry about per se, but I believe the 2.2.3 or whatever version number that ends up being, that might be even a minor release, a 2.3.0. That may affect our API to some considerable degree because now we have the potential of addressing multiple currencies at any given time. So Um, we have a couple of ways that we can solve that, and I'm pushing personally for having a V2 API so that our V1 API is continued to be maintained, and we can slowly deprecate it and migrate to V2 as everyone is ready to do. But I don't know that that's going to be the case yet. So
Yeah.
I suspect that maybe our next developer call will have an answer there because we're making those decisions as we speak.
Cool. Yeah, and just to dredge up a little old history, as you guys are making these technical decisions, I want you, and I see that Brian's on the call now. I like the idea that you and I talked about in the past of super nodes, of having like maybe a fork of the server where one does a little extra to help the network, and then there's like the light node that is just purely there for the experience of using the network.
Yeah, it's an idea that remains in the back of my mind, and it's just something that has to be a slow sale to the team. Implementing those sorts of features doesn't make sense, but that's noted. Does anyone else have any input or updates or questions that they'd like to share or ask? I am inclined to end the call earlier rather than dragging things out uncomfortably for everyone, but if anyone feels otherwise, I know a few show tunes. But other than that, I suspect Brian wants show tunes. I think our next call may be postponed because it is the 4th of July weekend, and for those of you who are Americans and patriotic, they will be unavailable. I don't know specifically what it's going to be postponed or if it is for sure going to be postponed, if Brian or Jen may want to comment in chat or via audio. But we'll definitely notify you guys in the chat rooms well ahead of time and via our mailing list if you guys have not already subscribed to our updates for when these calls happen. We'll definitely let you know through those channels. And one last chance. Jen says the 4th of July meeting is going to be canceled and that she will update that on the site. So I assume that'll be in a blog post. Keep an eye on that in your RSS feeds. And stay toasty. Thanks, guys, for joining the call, and I'll see you in the chats.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jen.